Nice. We got a nice size group here. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And okay, so I want to welcome you all guys for coming here. My name is Manny Rivera. I put this presentation together as a modified version of what I typically educate on my day-to-day basis. And so what I wanted to do is kind of give some guidelines here before we begin. I'm not doing any kind of product demo. You know, I may briefly show you some of the back ends of the mining pool or how to access it, but I certainly won't be doing any particular product demonstrations. I'm not here to hype anybody up. You know, this group and this call was put together as we're all either fellow miners or we're all holding Kala. And that's where I'm going to be adding my perspective and my view and based on things that I am seeing. That's all I'm going to talk about, just the facts and what I found, and of course, what I believe is going to be happening based on everything that I found. I'm currently not an active NUI member. I was back in 2018 when I was first introduced, but I'm not active. I'm not promoting any particular company or recruitment or anything like that. Again, I'm just showing my perspective from a cryptocurrency expertise. I'm currently mining Kala. I have been since 2018. I actually purchased Kala in the ICO before I decided to buy two mining rigs, and I am still currently actively running those. And I'm also purchasing Kala on Probit. And again, I'll get into some of the reasons on why, but these are just some items I want you to know before we begin. I'll do a quick introduction about me, my background, what I do for a living, and that way we can get to know each other a little bit better. I'm not sure where all of your expertise or knowledge is when it comes to Bitcoin and blockchain, so I'm just going to do a brief overview. You may already know some of the information. It may be new to you, so you may either get something new from that or you're not, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same playing field and all on the same page when it comes to that. So a little bit about myself. I'm a father of 3 children. My beautiful wife and I live in Marlborough, Connecticut. I've been working in the information technology space for the past 23 years. This picture of me was back in 2016 when my hair was much, much shorter, when I was a recipient of the 40 under 40 for running 2 different companies. The first company I run is a web development company by the name of MD Tech Team. We've developed over 300 websites, and I'm a programmer by core competency, and we've developed over 300 different websites, and I'm very involved in different web-based technologies, including blockchain. On the cryptocurrency side, I'm a senior partner with a company called CoinBridge Partners. We're essentially a buying and selling network. We can help liquidate your Bitcoins or help purchase Bitcoins. We're also in the process of creating the biggest Bitcoin ATM network in Connecticut, which I'm pretty excited about. And in general, I've been working with Bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies since 2014. So I've been able to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Maybe not from the very beginning, but certainly pretty close. And I have experience in both the buy, sell, mine side. As I mentioned, we help liquidate folks that want to be liquidated. And that just means going from cash or fiat to Bitcoin or cryptocurrency and vice versa. So quick disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. So don't take anything that I tell you as legal advice. I'm not a tax expert or an accountant, so don't take any of it as tax advice. I am not a day trader. I do invest. But I've been doing this long enough to know that if you hold long enough, you get the biggest gains by just holding instead of playing back and forth with it. And I do have certain strategies that I implement that let me at least realize gains when I can, and then cover short losses when things start to slide backwards. But I'm not a day trader by day. As I mentioned, my core competency is in programming, and my day-to-day operations are between the web development side and dealing with cryptocurrencies. So that's a little bit about myself. That's where my background is. Again, I have no affiliation with NUI. I have no affiliation with Applegate. I am just, at this, for all intents and purposes, a Kala holder, just like you guys. I've been waiting since 2018, just like you guys. I share a lot of the frustration when it comes to non-communication from the company. I feel the pain because I know what it's like to be involved in projects and not hear from anything. So how I got involved with NUI and Kala before I get into all that other stuff, back in 2014, I started our first crypto business. I'm gonna fast forward that to 2017 when it really started to take off. And one of the main reasons why is because we had one of the best bull runs in Bitcoin's history in 2017. So that year was absolutely glorious. All the years of cutting my teeth, educating people on Bitcoin from 2014 to 2017 made it all seem worth it. So that year I was flying high, smiling ear to ear. You couldn't tell me anything about it. I for sure thought that this was it. Bitcoin was ready to take over the world. And then in December of 2017, we started to lose grip. And then we then dove into the biggest bear market of the crypto realm. And so at the end of 2017, we were positioned. We had to leave a previous opportunity where we were helping people mine Bitcoin. And of course, in mining, there's two routes to go. You either physically hold the rigs themselves, or you participate in what's called cloud-based or contract-based mining rigs. And so as the network difficulty started to decline and Bitcoin started slipping from the all-time high, we were started to evaluate different companies. And one of those companies was Mintage Mining. So I flew out to Utah. I met with Darren. I met with David. I met with Mike. I met with everybody who was there at that time. And I loved what they were trying to do. Now, there was two aspects of it from that time. There was the MLM network marketing aspect, which would provide the marketing arm. And then there was the technology side, which was Mintage Mining. And I love the way that they had set it up. They set it up in a way where, as Darren puts it, there was a Chinese firewall between the two companies, allowing them to operate the way they were. And getting to know David Childs and Darren through those meetings and getting to know what they were really trying to accomplish, I was pretty impressed. So that's how I got started in it. And as you can imagine, fast forward between the spiraling bear market of 2017, 2018, and 2019, not many companies survived. And I don't care if you're looking at it from an MLM standpoint or a traditional standpoint, but you had exchanges go under, you had mining companies go under, you had ICOs that never saw the light of day after accepting Bitcoin from people. You had the SEC just kind of running rampant and trying to tag as many companies as they can to bring them down. And so it was a very dark time. There was a lot of tears in 2017, 18, and 19. And, so that fast forwards to why we're here today. So what I want to do is kind of break down Bitcoin and blockchain so that we have a base understanding of what we're doing in Kala. And hopefully some of this background information will shed some light on the things that are happening. So breaking down what Bitcoin is, it's a digital currency. The crypto part of cryptocurrency means encryption. In Bitcoin's case, the encryption that is being used is called SHA-256. It's a 256-bit encryption algorithm to encrypt the actual communication between the coins itself. And the transactions happen peer-to-peer. There's no intermediary, there's no independent person, there's no central bank, no government in between the transactions. So that's cryptocurrency, right? And then currency itself is just a form of money to create the transaction. Already mentioned it's a peer-to-peer. There's no central medium, and it was a revolutionary idea. It came out around 2008, right after the first financial crash, and it took, well, we got 2020, so it took 10 years plus for it to finally kick over, finally get some adaptation, finally get to a point where people are at least have heard the word Bitcoin, right? So can you imagine going through a period of time where everybody's looking at you crazy? They're like, oh, this will never replace the US dollar. This, and not that it's supposed to, but just things of that nature, giving you all this flack for a revolutionary idea like Bitcoin. And it's interesting now to see that the people that I talked to, even back in 2015, are circling back 5 years later to say, man, are you still in it? You must be smiling, you must be happy. And it's like, yeah, but it all came with education and learning more about it and finding out what I'm going to show you here. So the blockchain itself. The blockchain is essentially, it's a public ledger, right? So banks have always used ledgers, but they, for the most part, have been private. You've had to have had an account in their system to see your ledger. You can't even see the total bank's ledger. It's your ledger inside of their bank. Blockchain is the complete opposite of that. Blockchain is a shared public ledger that keeps a permanent record of all the transactions that have taken place. And it does it in a secure, chronological, and most importantly, immutable way. So that means once a transaction has been written, it can't be overwritten, right? So there's a term in the industry, it's called a 51% attack. And the only way to try to overturn a transaction in a block is to have 51% of the network go after it. And I'm going to tell you why that's important down the road. Now, remember, we're still talking blockchain. And so this is the best analogy that I've found. The fly in the amber, right? You guys remember Jurassic Park, the old man that had the walking stick? He had the amber, the fly stuck in the amber, right? And it was a way of fossilizing the fly. So in this case, in relation to blockchain, the fly represents the transaction, and once it's in there, it can't be removed, can't be tampered with without it being immediately apparent. So in layman's, this is what the blockchain does. There's transactions that happen on a public ledger. They get placed into a block, and once that block is full, it gets literally chained to the next block. And every ledger is copied amongst the entire blockchain network. Every miner has a copy of it. Let's get into the mining aspect. So I mentioned mining. Bitcoin mining is just the process by which the transactions are verified and added to the blockchain. So there's this massive network that has nothing but essentially exahash at this point. There's just millions of horsepower, millions of hash power on this Bitcoin network that are verifying all the transactions that are happening on the blockchain itself. And it's a way for new Bitcoins to get released into the blockchain network. So you may have heard of this thing called halving that just happened recently. Well, it happens every 210,000 blocks. And what it does is it reduces the amount of Bitcoins that get released every time a block gets mined. So the purpose of it is to fight against inflation. So there will never be any inflation in Bitcoin, because every 210,000 transactions, the amount of Bitcoin that get released into the network gets cut in half. And so that's why they call it halving. So this
is that the same for Kala?
That is the same for Kala. And that's a great point, Vaughn. So Kala, because it was forked from Bitcoin, and actually I'm getting into that now, it does halve. Now you can program different halving times. So Bitcoin, they're telling you every 4 years. It's really every 210,000 transactions. So that can happen, depending on how much hash power is in the network, can actually happen sooner than 4 years. But Kala, written in its white paper, is dictated every 4 years. And so there's two types of mining. There's a cloud-based mining, and there's the ability to just own your own rig. And Kala offers both, just like Bitcoin offers both. Most coins out there, you can participate in mining in one form or another. You either have bought the hardware yourself, you're storing it, you've created the infrastructure for it, which includes electricity, cooling, the network infrastructure behind it, or you're essentially going to lease that power from somebody that owns it, and they're going to share the profits that's made from that. So there's two types of mining that you can fall in. So that's Bitcoin. So let's talk about Kala, right? So Kala was forked off the Bitcoin blockchain back in 2018. As I mentioned before, the encryption is the SHA-256. They had an initial coin offering in 2018. The blockchain itself is quasi-private. And what I mean by that is the mining pool itself isn't public. You can view it publicly, but you can't just point your own miners to it. Like if I wanted to point some of my other SHA-256 miners to the Kala pool, I can't, because it's essentially a private pool. You have to be invited in or have the approved hardware to even join. Now, there's some great pros to that. What that means is if you own a ginormous data center that you're just mining cryptocurrency in general, you're most likely going to have a portion of your miners that are SHA-256. You're going to have GPU-based miners. You're going to have miners that focus on different scripts. Essentially, all these coins operate on scripts. So with our mining pool being essentially private, you can only get into it if you're approved by Nui or Mintage. It protects us from these bigger guys just showing up with all this hash power and trying to overrun the network. So I thought that was a pretty interesting position to put the company in and put the blockchain in. And again, this is something that I wasn't told by the company. I had to find out. I was digging through it, kind of doing some investigation to it. So unlike Bitcoin, it's instead of 21 million coins, there's 21 billion coins. 9 billion coins mined in the first 4 years. So if you're a miner like myself, you've already been mining for the last 2.5, let's see, yeah, almost 3 years coming to it. And so collectively, we've mined about 4.5 billion coins so far. And here's some other aspects that I found. So we're averaging anywhere to 2 to 3 petahash on our Kala mining pool, which is great because most exchanges require a minimum petahash in the network. And for the most part, 3 petahash seems to be the common ground. If you look at the Kala white paper, they talk about the 2 groups of how they're selling it. I was a part of group 1, but then group 2 is looking to have a total of 10,000 terahash, plus the 3,000 terahash from the group 1. So the runway for Kala is up to 13 petahash. So that's important because the blockchain in itself is the real asset. Kala is just the Kala is the coin that just sits on top of it, right? So the network is the actual asset to any blockchain project. So if you own your own hashing power and you're not renting it from anybody and you're expanding it, that's a very positive thing. You want to have that. Otherwise, you can end up having to rent it from somebody. And if you're not cash flow positive, then it's going to be costing you money to rent it from somebody else. Versus us, we are the miners. We have miners. I have miners in my office, as I mentioned. You guys have miners. So the network becomes the asset itself, and Kala just kind of sits on it, and it's used for different transactions. The company is a publicly traded company, Applegate, right? And the reason why I wanted to put this in here is because blockchain-based companies that are focused on cryptocurrencies have anywhere between a 50x and a 200 times evaluation of the company. So now imagine, we're already publicly traded. We're currently trading in the pink sheets, but that could change down the road, right? So we already gone over a hurdle of being a publicly traded company. Like we don't have to go through that process. We're already facing the standard markets and able to trade there. And then with a 50 to 200x evaluation, that's pretty big. Even on the conservative end, of 50x is amazing. So you look at companies like Coinbase, right? They talk about being evaluated. They haven't gone IPO yet or anything like that. Gemini, all these American-based exchanges, they haven't gone IPO just yet. But when they do, they're evaluated based on how many wallets they have, right? They're evaluated how much gross revenue gets sent through that wallet, how much coins are still sitting in that wallet. All that applies to the books of that company. And then when the evaluation comes to being publicly traded, it could be 50x to 200x of whatever those books are. So Darren on Friday, I think that was a great video he did for Probit, kind of highlighting what Kala does. We were only one of 2 projects on the entire exchange, and that excuse me, that exchange does about $40 million a day in total business. So it's not the biggest exchange, but it's not the smallest either. Excuse me. So in that video, he mentioned 27,000 wallets. He made mention of an updated wallet coming where you'll be able to hold your BTC. So again, when you talk about evaluations and companies that, well, what are you holding? Applegate gets to show on their books that they have, X amount of Kala wallet with X amount of Kala sitting in it with X amount of Bitcoin and Ethereum and Litecoin. I think he said the 4 majors you'll be able to house on that wallet. So that's an awesome thing. These are all just things that I'm finding that, seeing other projects, especially through this last bear market, that absolutely went to crap. I mean, zero, nothing. You couldn't find them. They were getting delisted. No information on their Twitter or their social media handles, like nothing. At least with this, you could see that the mining pool is still up and running. You could see Applegate putting out all these press releases, right? The acquisition of GPS Cash, DocLock. We just found out over this video, Artist XP, the Sense app. So they're releasing all these press releases. Now, could they have told us internally to do it, that they were doing it? Maybe. But if we notice all the press releases are being sent out by Applegate. So Applegate's the one that's, essentially controlling all this, which I'm okay with if they continue to go down this road. Now, I've submitted requests to these guys on an updated white paper. The last time I saw their white paper was, or updated, was in June of 2019, a new milestone paper. a network release resource. So I'm hoping to get that information. It may not be information that they could share with me right now, just because it's going to be, it's part of their marketing as far as when it's going to be released and the availability of the actual product itself. So yeah. So I'm going to stop my screen here and just kind of, open it up. How did I do 20 minutes? That wasn't too bad. As I mentioned, I got 3 kids, so I try to make this for an hour. So now I'll go through some of the comments and open it up for any questions. But, that's kind of my 2 cents, my 2 kala on what I think is going down. I think they've gone this far. They certainly have put money behind this. We've put money behind this. Darren is making a good effort into making sure the world knows about us. And I think that if it's done properly and correctly, yeah, we could be, and we could be a dominant blockchain company. And I'm not referring to the newy side of things where it's just the MLM, because, really that's just the marketing aspect. But I mean, Applegate as a publicly traded company can really be a dominant blockchain contender, especially when you start looking at some of the things that Darren mentioned in the video, like already having businesses to onboard and use Kala. Now remember, Kala is just the coin that sits on top of it. As miners, when these transactions start to happen, we're going to get rewarded for that because we have to verify the transactions with our miners. So yeah, I just think that this project has legs. It's been a long time coming, and I know a lot of people. What we may see in the next 60, 90, 120 days, all the stuff that they've been working on for the last 4 years. I know the ICO came out in 2018, but when I talked to Darren, that was a brainchild of his from even 2 years prior. And it took them that long to develop the blockchain and then get the wallet and understand exchanges and then fight through all the SEC and FTC when you have all that, when you have all those 2 companies kind of blending together, both the mining company and the network marketing aspect. So to see these guys still afloat, not only still afloat, but they went from just trying to survive to now in a position to thrive, to really go for it. So so that's what I wanted to do. And collectively, there was no other way to get Kala other than buying it from them, right? So what we see what's going on in Probit, that's us. I literally had an opportunity to see it today. I typically spend more time in the exchange, but with the holiday yesterday, I had a lot of catch up to do. And so I just saw 2 quick positions, and I'm looking at it. I see a 4 million or 5 million Kala sale for 0.00135 or 4. And I'm like, to me, that is super undervalued. I think what we're going to end up seeing is, and I get it. Time can prolong. And all I'm saying is, guys, if we work together, we can increase the value. So even if you're trying to get rid of it, let's just not go to sub pennies. Let's get it to where it should be. And I'll end it with this before I open. I bought it as the ICO for 2 cents. I had the perceived value to mine it at 2 cents. And that was back in 2018. So you got to figure that between the months of electricity, the infrastructure behind it, I'm very well into the Kala coin itself. So now 2 years later, you've got the ICO and miners with the perceived value of 2 cents. They open up an extension of their Nui company to Nui International, which extends us to the rest of the world. They buy it through their back end, starting at, I want to say 5 cents. I think it was 5 cents was the first batch, all the way up to 10 cents. So we already had a marketplace purchasing it in that realm, with the miners having an underlying support level of 2 cents. So in my head, when this thing went public, I was like, man, if we can, I don't want to say control it, but if everybody was on the same page, we could have set the biggest selling wall or buyer's wall at 2 cents and only sell from anything above that. But I just think people didn't really understand how to use the exchange or what kind of value that Kala would have. I also know from experience that the second an ICO hits a public exchange, all the first people are going to dump. I've experienced that multiple times. But now I'm just like, man, it's cheaper for me to buy it than to mine it. So I'm automatically going to purchase because I get to double down on the position that I was already in, right? I've been mining for 2 years, 2 miners. You can imagine the numbers is like around 3.5 million Kala. So I'm able to just continue to buy it at sub pennies, knowing that the true market value should be anywhere between 5 and 10 cents. And there's one thing that I don't like doing is projections, because you know, I don't think anybody has a crystal ball anymore, and anybody that tells you they do, they're lying, because nobody predicted the flash crash back in March when it went from, you know, 8,000 to 3,500. You know, I, myself included, I got liquidated on a lot of positions. So nobody can tell you that the market's going to do what it's going to do. You just have to kind of wait it out and look at the fundamentals. This company actually has fundamentals because they own the blockchain, they own the network, they have an infrastructure, and that in itself acts as an asset. So I'll do my best to answer your questions. I may not know it all. There's about 100 people on this call. So what I think we could do is, if you have a question, just to make this a lot easier to manage, send me a private question or public question in the chat, and then I'll address it and answer it from there.